För vi kommer från ett företag som heter Tirage. Och vi är ett väldigt litet importbolag som har ett gäng viner som vi importerar. Och vi startade 2015 var det till och med. Jag och en kompis Joakim hade varit i Champagne. Och vi upptäckte en champagne som vi tyckte att den var så otroligt bra att vi ville kunna få tag i den hemma i Sverige. Och jag köpte några flaskor till pappa. Och han tyckte också att den där var riktigt bra. Så ja, vi startade och fick alla tillstånd för att kunna importera till Sverige. Så det började så helt enkelt. Och vi har nu 4 olika märken som vi har. Vi började med Champagne Joseph Deruet som är 2 bröder som gör 20-25 000 flaskor per år. De har en träpress från 1888 som är den äldsta i champagnedistriktet som är i bruk. Vi har även vunnit ett pris med de här som var bästa bubblande rosé 2016. Så det är champagne som vi tycker är väldigt god, väldigt bra. Nästa märke som vi börjar ta in det är Erik Tallier. Och jag vet att Erik han är här på mötet och följer den här provningen. Det vann vi i år. Vann vi Wine Nordic Wine Challenge bästa champagnen av en av deras Sulligan Marais.
I bästa prisklass, i högsta prisklass.
I högsta prisklassen dessutom. Så det är de. Sen har vi ett väldigt litet champagnehus, Domaine Vancy. De har tidigare tillhört ett kollektiv och nu har de börjat göra sina egna och de kör all in och tänkte köra biodynamiskt. Så de har en häst som går omkring där och trampar på jorden och gör det vid rätt månfas och lite sådär. Och det här är deras första champagne som de gör själv. Men så fick vi kontakt med Terrasses de Largo, Thomas, som var årets vindistrikt för Munskänkarna. Och då pratade vi om att vi skulle köra en turné eftersom det var årets vindistrikt och ta in lite låda viner och åka runt hos Munskänkarna och hålla provningar. Men det där var ju ganska klart att det gick ju inte att göra i den här situationen och då tänkte vi att ja, men vad gör vi? Vi hade ju förberett allt. Så då var det att vi körde det här samarbetet och ordnade en distansprovning istället. Så det är där vi är nu och vi är otroligt glada att det har varit sån bra respons. Och vi hoppas att det kommer att smaka nu när vi testar de här vinerna.
Vi tog ju först in då en pall utav de här provlådan. Och den gick ju åt så det bara swisha till om det. Och så tog vi in en till pall och det finns ju fortfarande några kvar att köpa, de som är intresserade.
Precis, det gick otroligt fort att få den där andra pallen trots att vi var lite oroliga att transporterna kan ju stanna. Men det vi har nu så att det går fortfarande att beställa. Då kan vi börja med provningen. Thomas, are you there?
I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Cool. So this is Thomas Magin from Terrasses de Largo. You can tell more about yourself and I will let you hold the presentation.
Okay. Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, so I'm Thomas. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for being there. It's really a pleasure. It's quite unusual to do that, but really appreciate having this opportunity of offering my wine, even though we're all locked down here in France. But so yeah, as said by my friends from Tirage, we are from Languedoc-Roussillon, and especially from Roussillon. You will see in this presentation that this area is very different to the other one from Languedoc. So both are very different. Les Terrasses de Largo is a quite small winery from the real south of France, so very close to the Spanish border. It's been created at the end of the 80s by my grandfather, and I took over last year. So I'm going to tell you more about that in the next presentation. Yeah, so very quickly, I'm going to introduce the winery, also tell you about our region, because I believe this is for most of you quite unknown, what Roussillon, what this area is. And it's been nominated Wine Region of the Year by Munskänkarna, so I can't really pronounce it. But so that's really great, and wanted to show you a bit how it is. And then we're going to start with the wine. I'm going to tell you a bit how I feel them, how we made them. And yeah, so let's start.
Tout commence dans les années 1980, lorsque Roger Mangin s'installe dans le village de Vingros pour enfin réaliser son rêve de vinifier son propre vin. Une aventure passionnante commence alors, tout d'abord avec quelques hectares, qui vont rapidement se multiplier face au succès des vins, pour devenir aujourd'hui 35 hectares de vignes, toutes cultivées en viticulture raisonnée. Aujourd'hui, cette passion se poursuit avec la 3e génération. Notre terroir permet la production de vins rouges puissants et généreux, aux assemblages de Syrah, de Grenache et de Mourvèdre. Les vins blancs restent des secrets bien gardés. Frais et élégants, ils mettent à l'honneur des cépages locaux, tels que le Grenache blanc et la Roussanne. Venez partager avec nous cette passion et ce terroir en découvrant nos vins.
At least you might have got some pictures of how it is. You may have noticed it's very sunny. It's already, we do have kind of mountains, even though we're really close to the sea. So as you can see, our winery is located at the far south of France, in this really little green piece on the left-hand side, on the left map. And this is part of this Languedoc-Roussillon big region, which is quite, I believe it's one of the biggest wine regions in the world. And Roussillon is a little part of it. And that's a topography map of Roussillon. So you'll notice is, I believe some of you have went there for holiday, and it's a big plain basically. So that's because you got all these sea coast and so on. And Languedoc used to be very well known in France for producing a lot of volumes, not really focused on quality. And things have changed drastically in the last years. We, Roussillon, are really on this little corner on the left-hand side with these mountains. And it's kind of very different to the rest of the region. If you go to the next slide, we will zoom on this little piece of mountains. As you can see, Roussillon is basically a small plain close to the sea. That's a place where you can have some Chardonnay grape varieties. But for the rest, it's a lot of mountains, also hills in between. And that allows to produce wines with grape varieties that you mostly have also in the north of Spain. So it's kind of different to Languedoc. We are well known for being also the sunniest region in France. So that means it's also really warm. I've tried to show you a bit how it is with the wind. So it's basically, we got 1 day out of 3 with a lot of wind. The most popular one is the Tramontane. Tramontane is a wind, a dry wind, kind of cold, and it's coming from the country. So it's kind of interesting because since it's really warm, that we're close to the ocean, it allows to dry out the vines, so to avoid diseases. So yeah, basically what you should know about Roussillon is that it's very sunny. So the wines will have a lot of sweetiness, meaning also a lot of alcohol at the end if we don't really control it. And that also we do have a lot of wind. On the right top corner, you got this little flag. That's the one from Catalonia. And Catalonia is not only in Spain, so you got the biggest part around Barcelona, but there is also Catalonia Norte, so the north side Catalonia, and that's actually the Roussillon. So on top of that, you got this Catalan culture, meaning that we also have our own gastronomy, and we think we are a bit different, distinct to the other vineyards from the south of France, since we are trying to pair our wines also with this gastronomy. So that's our valley with a sunset. Basically, we got the vineyards here in this valley. Also, some others on the right-hand side behind the cliff. The village is called Vingros, so it's quite a small village with 600 inhabitants approximately. But we are very famous for the soils we have. So there is a very big cliff on the right side on the picture, and that's one of the most beautiful clay cliffs of France. And we got a lot of people coming to hike and so on. And for the wine, it's actually also very interesting because the cliff allows to bring shadow to the vineyard. So in our case, we got first the clay limestone soils for wines, but also this shading of the cliff which reduces a little the duration of the sun per day. So we are quite lucky in our village because we are not suffering as much from the sun as the other one in the plains. So we are able to do some more fresh white wines because actually the most difficult wines to produce in our case are the white. The red are quite powerful, but I'm going to show you that with the wine. If there are any questions, by the way, you can already stop me. Maybe we can also do a question answer session before we start with the wines. I can't remember if you have a special slide for the winery because I haven't thought a lot about the winery. But so, as I said before, created by my grandfather at the end of the 80s. We are originally coming from the Champagne region, and my grandfather was not someone from the wine industry. That was always his passion. He always wanted to buy vineyards. He was coming from a farmer family from the northeast side of France, and he always wanted for when he retired to come back to this country, to soils and to farming. And so he started with only a few hectares at the end of the 80s. It worked well. It bought some more, and now we got 35 hectares. So it's starting to be good. So they are not as expensive as the one in the Champagne, but you can already start doing something good. And my father is doing something else, so he didn't know my grandfather if someone was willing to continue or not. And I told him at the end of 2018 that I was willing to pursue that, to continue what he started. And we started together last year, and now we are together working in the winery. As per the wines, we are proposing now 8 different wines. We used to do much more, but I've done business studies, so I wanted to do a little rebranding. I was thinking my grandfather was not doing maybe the best thing for his distribution. The wines were good, but we were lacking maybe some identity. And so we restarted with a smaller range last year with only 6 wines plus 2 sweet wines. You have normally at home the 6 still wines we have. For the sweet wines, I might say a few words about them. Those are called vin doux naturel, natural sweet wines, and they are the local specialty of the Roussillon. So I would say it's quite similar to one from Porto, port wine, in the way we are also stopping the fermentation by adding pure alcohol. So we are trying to keep the sweetness of the grape during the fermentation in the way that by adding alcohol, we stop the fermentation. So you end up with liquor wine with more than 110 grams per liter of sugar in the wine, and about 16 degrees of alcohol. It's quite interesting to taste. But so those are the sweet wines, and for the rest, they are still wines. we already had the question last time during the last session we had. People were asking about the sweetiness of the wines. In France, it's very different to Germany, for example. We don't have brut, extra brut, or demi-sec. You may have that for the champagne, for example, for sparkling wines. But in the case of sweet wines from the south, we just consider they are not sweet. So if we talk about the alcohol degree, the sweetest one we have is this one, and that's only 1 gram per liter. So it's as if there were no sugar. Okay. But we are going to start with the 2 whites, then with the rosé, and then with the order we're going to do the little red wine, and the sweetie wine, the simple one, then a little more complex with Elecció Red, and we're going to finish with l'Héritage. For those of you who are willing to taste l'Héritage, I would suggest you already open it right now. I'm going to do it myself too, because this is the only one that you may have to decant. So we have an oak barrel aging for that, and as such it needs a bit of aeration. So it's pretty good if you can already open it right now. So to introduce you to the 6 different wines, we got a range of 3 wines which are called Elecció. So the white, the rosé, and the red. I'd like to start by saying a few words about that, and then also on maybe how we segmented this range. So Elecció means the choice in Catalan. So it's basically Elección, election. And we already had this wine, the Les Espassoles, which was very fruity. It was for immediate pleasure. We also had our premium wine, which was the signature wine from my grandfather. And we were looking for something in between, something not as expensive as l'Héritage, but with some more complexity than Les Espassoles, because Les Espassoles is, you'll see it's very pretty and it's made for that, but we were looking for something with more complexity. So we're asking ourselves, okay, what would be the best choice between fruitiness and having this, bringing in this complexity of the terroir we have, so of the environment and of the characteristic of the vineyards. And so that's how Elecció came. And so each time I'm going to introduce you to an Elecció, I'm going to explain you, okay, those are the fruity notes, but this is also why we consider it as local and a bit more complex than a normal fruity wine. Then we got the Chardonnay. That's I'll talk about it later. And yeah, let's start. I think that's the best way. So Elecció White. I started with this wine because I consider it as the aperitif wine we have. So the wines to drink in a bar or in a restaurant before the meal, or with some cold things, some little snacks. It's made of white Grenache. So in Spanish, it's garnacha. Grenache is a very popular grape variety from the Mediterranean coast. So you'll find it a lot in Spain, a bit in Italy, and also through the coast of France. But that's mainly red Grenache, and white Grenache is quite rare to find. So we here have 70% of white Grenache, and the rest is Roussanne. That's here 2019 vintage, which was a bit particular last year because the Roussanne it was very sunny last year, and the Roussanne have much more power than normally. So it's more balanced actually than a 70-30 for the taste. You'll get a lot of flower notes from the Roussanne too. But basically, white Grenache is characterized by some peach notes, some white nectarine notes, and Roussanne is more about flowers and maybe some acacia notes. I'll open it too and I'll test it with you. Hop. As you can also see, I don't know if some of you are already tasting it, but we here have 13.5 degrees. That's why I told you, if you compare it with the champagne, for example, or with a white wine from the Loire Valley, they are mostly around 12%. Loire Valley, it's mostly 11%, and here we got 30.5. We managed to blend them well, so you'll not notice them a lot. But this is also to show you that the region is very sunny, and this has an impact also on the wine. The aging is quite simple, so we harvested them at the end of August. We made a simple aging in vats, and we already bottled them. I think it was like in the third week of December, in order to keep the fruit. So on the nose, you already have this those flower notes, and also some bit of those peach notes. Yeah, and I'd say it's kind of vivid. You got some good energy. It's pretty much mineral. You got a bit of boldness, but not too much. So that's why I was recommended it mostly for an aperitif, not necessarily to accompany a meal. I believe our Chardonnay is much better for that, but that's pretty good with snacks, with little seafood, with sushi too. And if there are also any questions about this first wine. Last time we had the question about the sulfate. We're here with 110 sulfates. So it's not that much actually, in gram per liter, in milligram per liter, sorry. And it's not too much. We are trying not to add too much sulfate. So normally you shouldn't have any head ashes at the end. And for the sugar, I believe that's 0.5 gram per liter sugar.
Yeah, you can really feel the fruitiness, peach.
If some of you have different glasses, it might actually be interesting to open the Chardonnay and to compare them, because they have different robes, they have different colors, and you'll see how different they are. This is very interesting to see with the same terroir, within the same region, or different the wine can be.
Okay, so we have a question here. How much sugar in?
Yeah.
We'll actually got a question on another one. the Elecció.
Okay. So Elecció White, that's a 0.5 gram per liter sugar. Yeah.
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 You see that?
Yeah, as I told you, the wines in the Roussillon, they are sweet, and they are really, really sweet, and they are the sweet wines with 110 approximately gram per liter, or they are still, and in that case they are, for most of them, below the 1 gram per liter. So let's say 0.5. I believe the Chardonnay is 0.4 gram per liter. So I got both wines. I got the Elecció White and the Chardonnay. For those of you who also were able to open them, you'll notice the Elecció White is much more into citrus notes on the color, so it's more pale. with greener, I don't know how to say that, but greener effects. And the Chardonnay is much more on a gold color. And by the nose, you will see it has already much more creaminess, much more boldness. That's because it's made on lees, so on the yeast, a bit in a champagne style, I'd say, but obviously it's totally different. The terroir is also different, so the soils, they are different to the Elecció. Elecció is mostly clay and limestone, a lot of clay actually also. And for the Chardonnay, we are doing it in the plain, so it's closer to the sea, and it's mostly stony soils, also some a bit of sand in the soil. It's called Chardonnay de nos nuits, and for those of you who know a bit of French, nos nuits, it means from our nights. The idea was that so if we harvest in the night, if we harvest at the end of August, as we do for it, I think we harvested it in last year on the 26th of August. It's really, really warm during the day. And so we are thinking of even harvesting really, really fast in the morning with machines, which was in our case not possible. And we ended up with this idea of harvesting at night, which is also popular in other countries or with other winemakers. But it became kind of an event with other people. We are inviting people doing that. And so we are starting at 11 p.m. The day before, and we end up at 5, 6 in the morning. This allows to keep the freshness of the grapes, but mostly to avoid oxidation. So to avoid to have the grapes already crushing in the trailer when we are harvesting, and producing a first juice which might go into a first fermentation. Chardonnay also, I didn't spoke about the grape variety, but that's one of the most popular grape variety in the world with Sauvignon. And the funny thing with Chardonnay is that you can grow it a bit everywhere. It's very flexible, but at each place it takes a different taste. If you go to Chablis, you will have this green apple aromas for the Chardonnay. In Australia or New Zealand, you will go much more into exotic fruits. Champagne is also well known for the Chardonnay, and in our case, you will see that we had some sun, so it's a sunny Chardonnay. So you get these pear aromas. I'll also have it, but yeah. So mostly you got from the nose something kind of creamy, and this is due to the aging on the yeast. So we are doing 1/3 on yeast, meaning we got 3 tanks, normal tanks, still tanks, but in one of them we are keeping the yeast. So it's a very, very different profile to the first wine, which was much more into dynamic, into an energy, and in this case it's much bolder. You have it everywhere in the mouth. In French, we say it's gras, so it's fat, got it a bit everywhere, and it's creamy. And as such, I think it's pretty good with some fish. But in that case, you can accompany a good meal with it. You can also go for accompanying cheese. And obviously, yeah. We were talking, so for the sugar, I already mentioned it. That's also, it's not very important in that case. It's only 0.4 grams per liter. But this has a bit more sulfate. And I think we had, for the last analysis show, we had 125 milligrams per liter. But it's actually not that much. I already had a lot of clients, mostly professional, who were saying, okay, why not adding some oak and do it mostly in a Burgundy style, because they are well known for using oak for their Chardonnay. But I believe we already have this. It remains simple. It has this very little creaminess coming from the yeast. I would be afraid to have something a bit too heavy maybe with the use of oak. Yeah. Could be a good try, but I think we would go on a different profile. So we don't have oak. The only wine for which we use oak is Elecció Rouge. That's actually, I think you have a vintage 2018. It's still pretty good. You can keep them up to actually 4 years, those wines. So we have no bottles. Last month we've bottled the Chardonnay 2019. But yeah, so just to say, because for the Elecció I also didn't mention the aging potential. For Elecció it's a bit less. But yeah, so you see 2018, and you'll go even more into this creaminess and lose a bit more fruit with the aging. Yeah. So I now have the Elecció Rosé, and the idea here was to produce a rosé in a more gourmet style. So what I mean by that is mostly a rosé that can allow you to accompany meals, and that you can drink anytime during the year. So you got this Provence rosé, which are really pale. They are really, really good for the summer because they are refreshing. But we didn't want it to produce something in that style because they do it in a really, really good way already. And so we wanted to do something more into a wine, so not only this beach rosé. So with this idea of Elecció, we kept the fruit, and we managed to bring some spiciness and some structure by using Syrah. Those two grape varieties, Syrah and Black Grenache, they are very, very much characteristic of our region, and actually of this whole region Languedoc-Roussillon. You will also find them in Côtes-du-Rhône. Grenache is famous for its fruit, for having this dark, some strawberry, all these berry aromas. And Syrah is mostly for the structure and also for a bit of spiciness. This blend is actually our Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blend. So that's the really famous one from Bordeaux, where you got this Cabernet Sauvignon bringing the structure and Merlot bringing the fruitiness. We have our own blend here, and that's Syrah and Grenache Noir. And in that case, you will already smell the Syrah with this spiciness, and that's what we wanted. So the soils are the same as for the Elecció White, and also the same as for Elecció Red. It's also clay limestone. We got a bit of stony soils also, but it's mostly clay and limestone. And you will see it has this. It's keeping these strawberry aromas from the Grenache, but we're adding this spiciness and this pepperness from the Syrah. So I'd say it's pretty good with all the chicken meal, some fish with oil. Yeah. And yeah, for the aging, that's also made in vats. We keep it simple, and we bottle them like 6 months after the harvest. So the last bottling for the rosé was in March. So it had some time in the vats, and that's a 2018. So it's also, it aged pretty well. I think I wrote in the booklet you have maybe 1 to 2 years, but actually it can last up to 3 to 4 years. For food and wine pairing, it was also this question about pairing them with traditional Swedish meals. And I don't know, I think Carlac, we had a very good idea for that. Can you recall it?
I was thinking about löjrom and a little salty. And we were also thinking a little bit about reindeer.
Yeah.
Not the heavy smoked reindeer.
Yeah, because for the smokiness, we were maybe thinking of Elecció Red.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and then with the sauce, the deer with the sauce, l'héritage might be better, a bit more complex. Yeah. Well, then talking about the reds, I suggest we start with them. That's Les Espassoles. That's actually in the vineyard of Les Espassoles. Les Espassoles is the name of a vineyard. It comes from Old Catalan, which means the Les Espaces, the spaces, and that's very close to the village, actually in the middle of the valley, and that's a place where I used to go with my grandfather and my parents in the past, and where we had a lot of good times, a lot of barbecues and so on. And so when it was time of choosing a name for the fruity one and the one for sharing, we're directly thinking of Les Espassoles because that was what we were doing there. And there is a thing about it, about this label. There is an app called Snap Press. We can send it later, maybe the name of the app, and you can scan the label with this app, and it will reveal an augmented reality video and some functionality, so you can learn more about the wine itself. But I'm here, so I'll try to tell you everything. So as I said, the idea of this wine was to do something very fruity, something mostly for barbecues. That's also why we use this crew cap, because that was meant to be brought on the beach or on a picnic. This is quite unusual for French wine. I know we are kind of snobby in France, so we don't appreciate the screw cap in this case, but we really wanted to have it simple and to have it fun, and that was also a way of expressing it. Maybe you can pass to the next slide. So we got the overview of the technical data. So it's made of Cabernet Sauvignon, which is not very local, but we added it to Carignan, and Carignan is pretty much local. Those are small, dark grapes, and it adds some structure. And so as I say, when you're smelling it, you'll see it's made of fruit. So you got this little cherry note, this fresh aromas of black cherries. But you also have a little bit of spiciness, but which is only coming from the skin of the Carignan, which is having some tannins. But yeah, by tasting it, you will see it's mostly on fruit.
Yes, we got a question to say something about the grapes.
So I said Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon is this grape you have in most of the Bordeaux wine. It's normally adding the structure into Bordeaux. It's kind of a strong grape, and you can do some really nice thing with it when you do an oak aging, for example. But it's also a grape which brings some fruitiness. And if you're aging the wine without some lot of complexity, and that you bottle it very early, you can keep this fruitiness. Carignan, so it's not local, it's not typical from Roussillon. It's something you'll find a bit everywhere in the world. Carignan, however, is much more local. I believe this is also to be found in the southern part of France and also in Spain. you have some black Carignan and some white Carignan. Those are grapes for which you have to wait a bit for the wines to produce. In the first year, they are really not good, so you should wait up to 10-15 years to have something pretty good with it. But it has, and Cabernet Sauvignon actually too, they both have some tannins in this little what I would call spiciness maybe. You got these tannins, you got this element in the skin of the grape, and that's the way we keep the structure.
Thank you.
In that case, because you already had this question about sweetiness, that's the sweetest wine we have here, and it has 1 gram per liter. It's still sweet also because we bottle them really early, so it's bottled mostly 3 to 4 months after the harvest. Yeah, and I believe I wrote in the booklet, I'm also adding this cavist advice, so this wine merchant advice, and I believe I wrote to be served fresh, around 15 degrees. Mostly they say that you should serve the wine at the room temperature, but in that case, and for Elecció Red too, I think it's better if they are between 13 to 15 degrees. They can still warm a bit after, but they are still simples. They don't have to be decanted. You already have the fruit directly, and by having them fresh, you can play a bit with the spiciness of both, especially for Elecció Red then. But in that case, yeah, it's meant to be for barbecue, and it doesn't have to be that complex. Yeah. Maybe you can start then with the Elecció Red. So we're gonna gain some more complexity in that case. So we are coming back to this typical blend of the Roussillon on this Syrah and black Grenache. That's the one we already had for the Rosé, except that here we got 50% of Syrah and 50% of black Grenache. That was also to avoid having too much pepperness. So Syrah is equal to pepperness and spiciness, and 100% Syrah wine are to be found in the Rhône Valley. We had the Grenache, and we wanted to play with the fruitiness of the Grenache to get a balance between both, and that's the way we do our Elecció. We add complexity to this fruity wine. So the soils are also the same as for the other Elecció. It's also made in vats, in steel tanks, but they are then matured we keep them in bottles in air-conditioned wine cellars, and we sell them 1 year after. Yeah, as for the smell, you got this. You still have this fruitiness balanced with this other one, and that's a wine we wanted for steaks, some nice meat. What we have in bistro, in brasserie in France, all these standard restaurants, and it's yeah. I don't know if there are already questions.
No, I can't see any questions.
Yeah. You also have some little herbs aromas. What I would call herbs from Garrigue, so the one we have in the south with rosemary.
So in general, can you say something about the alcohol levels in the Roussillon wines?
Well, as you can see, that's 14%. L'Héritage is 14.5, and in some cases we managed not to do it, but some other winemakers are up to 15, and it's kind of difficult because of the sun. So the sunnier it is, the more sweetness you have in the grapes, and so the more you're struggling to keep a low alcohol degree level. So it's then about how to blend them well in order not to feel too much the alcohol. So that's 14, and 14 is actually quite normal for our area. For the white wines, it's usually between 12.5 and 13.5, but that's already a lot, I'd say, compared to other regions. That's the climate we have. So we have to play with it, and then I believe the most important is how to blend them properly in order not to feel too much the alcohol. Yeah, I saw a question coming.
Yes, they were talking about garrigue.
Garrigue means basically that's the.
Oh, sorry.
That's
the vegetation type.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the vegetation we have in the Pré mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I wouldn't say it's a forest. So basically, if you look at the topography of the region, you got the plains with the beaches, then you got some bit of vineyards, and then you start climbing. You go a bit up hills, and you got these little medium hills, and they are all full of garrigue, which means dry vegetation made of a lot of very nice herbs, which smell very good. And then you got some little trees, and you go uphill and up to the mountains. And from our vineyards, we can see mountains with snow almost half of the year. The summit is called the Canigou, and that's a bit our Kilimanjaro. So you got, in a way of, in between 1 hour, 1.5 hour car drive, you got the sea and you got the ski station. Yeah, and garrigue is basically this vegetation you have in the middle. Is it understandable?
Yeah. So, but you have that in your area, so to speak, when you're close to your vineyards.
And well, the vineyards, they are in the middle of the garrigue. And the question was also about Languedoc, and they are the same. So it's this vegetation is something you have all around the south of France, mostly near to the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, I see some other question passing.
Yes, it was a question about aging, how the character the wines will change, and
it has some good potential. So that's 2018. I believe you can keep it still for 3-4 years. It will change, obviously, so it will lose some fruit. But you will get this, will also lose a bit of spiciness, but the fruit is gonna go more into candied fruits, and you will get these tertiary notes, but obviously not as much as if it was done in oak barrels. But it's good to drink now. I believe the peak is gonna be next year for it.
And then when they have the Héritage, that's another.
And now we have l'Héritage. Yeah. And you have a 2014 for l'Héritage. So that's the only one for which we use oak barrels. But yeah, that's really the signature of our winery. the idea of my grandfather was it was kind of fun at the beginning of Bordeaux wines. And but it was like saying, okay, they are made in a really good way, but they are a little bit too aggressive. And let's try something with the same aging in a Bordeaux style, but with some local grape varieties. So we used the typical blend of the Roussillon with this Syrah Grenache, and we added some Mourvèdre, which also brings some structure. So you end up with about 40% Syrah, 40% Grenache, black Grenache. So exactly the same blend as for Elecció Red. And then we add some 20% of Mourvèdre. We do that, and then we got this aging during 12 months in French oak barrels. I say French oak because you might know that different, depending on where the oak is coming from, you got also different tastes. So French oak is very different to American oak or to Hungarian oak. American oak, for example, is characterized by some coconut notes, and here we are more into vanilla, for example, or some chocolate banana, and that's only for the nose. So it smells pretty good from the nose. What I didn't mention is that we are splitting the oaks in 1/3 1-year-old barrel, another third with a 2-year-old barrel, and the last third with young barrels. That's because the younger the oak is, the more power it brings. So the more oaky aromas it brings to the wines, and that's a way to balance this impact of the oak. Yeah. So yeah, you got this. You still have this little spiciness from the Syrah. You also have this fruit from the Grenache, but everything is blended into this oak.
We got some great comments.
Yeah.
From the wine. Some people are saying this is very good.
Cool.
And a super wine.
Cool.
And yeah, and actually we got questions if we can order the wines, each of the wines from Systembolaget. So that's a
very interesting question.
Yes, yeah. So we will have to arrange that because right now you can't buy the wines one on one. So and also I got a question of regarding the fact sheets, these fact sheets, if we can send them out on email.
Well, I mean, you have them, Peter, so maybe you can dispatch them. But then you can also, so this will allow people to watch the video with the sound at the beginning. And if there are also maybe some questions you still have, I can also give some answer before you send out the PowerPoint.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. If we get some more questions also.
Yeah. This is, I must say, this is kind of weird for me because I don't have the same bottle as you. So maybe wine is not an exact science. So in some cases you may have some problem with the cork, or the wine might have some little problem. And I can't really tell you that there is a problem in that case. So if it's excellent, then that's good. That's the wine I wanted you to have. But hopefully, you didn't have some bad surprises. I didn't mention the aging potential in this case. That's up to 10 years, something you'll be able to keep maybe 15 years. The new one especially, because that's a 2014, but we are now selling the 2015, and 2015 was an even better year. Oh. And they're gonna age really, really good. And you will, of course, lose this prettiness you have, but you will go even more into licorice and into chocolate aromas, and then to leather. So it's the wine is gonna live and change the different tastes. Yeah. Talking about the wine pairing in that case, I believe this could pair well with your deer in a sauce, in a wild sauce. So yeah, I believe in English they say it's the game meat. Yeah. So basically, this is a very small river you got in the middle of the valley. So our village is more on the right side. You got another village on the left side, and there are the two villages of the valley. And this little river is going through what I would call cliffs. And this place, this lake coming out the river, it's called Cône de l'Arago. And it's very famous because here in the vegetation, so actually in this garrigue on the right hand side, you got a cave where we founded the oldest prehistoric man from France. I think it's minus 450,000 years old. And so it's l'homme de l'Arago, the man from l'Arago, from this cave. And our vineyards, the first vineyards bought by my grandfather, they are located down from this cave, a little bit on the right-hand side, and they're in terraces. So that's why we named ourselves the Terrasses de l'Arago, the terraces from Arago. And it's kind of the famous place in the region. And it's very, very cool also to go for a bath, for a swim in the summer here. And but you see also I believe you can also imagine how warm it is and how sunny it is all the time, except now because it's raining since 2 weeks, but normally it's sunny.
We got a question regarding the volumes of the different wines. How many bottles you make a year?
Yeah, I forgot it. So it's also not an exact science. We are doing about 5,000 bottles of l'Héritage. The wine we are producing the most is Elecció Red, with I think last time almost 14,000 bottles. Elecció Rosé with only 3,000 bottles. Then the Chardonnay 7,000, 8,000 for Elecció Whites, and les Espassoles it's also about 7,000. So we are not using the whole capacity of the vineyards. My grandfather, being old, he stopped working all our vineyards in the last 10 years, and he still had some employees, but since he didn't know if someone wanted to take over, he rented the vineyard. So there were other farmers taking our vineyards and giving us money for that, and so we were not using the whole capacity. So at the moment we're only using 25 hectares, and my goal is then to recreate everything and reuse the whole capacity of the property, the land we have. I'm also gonna launch normally a new one next year, something I would like a bit different from the Roussillon type of wine. So something maybe not so heavy and not too much into the alcohol. So I was planning on harvesting some Grenache maybe at the end of August. So they could have a 13% degree of alcohol, which could be also very interesting. So they would be more fruity, but might not keep the structure. So yeah, but yeah, you got an answer about the production. Oh, what could be also interesting is I don't know if you've heard about this application on smartphone, Vivino, which allows you to give grades to the wine. That's something that could also be interesting since the labels are new, so they are totally unknown on Vivino. So if you do that, I mean, you should only do that if it's for giving good grades, obviously. But then, yeah, I encourage you to, because I'm looking on that, and it's also a way to get feedback and to see, okay, maybe I should improve on that type of wine, or yeah. But it's always good to compare wines with the price level, and obviously you can't compare les Espassoles with l'Héritage. So when you give a grade, it's for this specific price quality ratio, and how you found it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe we've reached an end. If we don't have any more questions, we could always send us an email, and please follow us on Instagram. You can follow Tirage and follow Terrasses.
Yeah.
And yes, visit our websites and so forth. And yes. Okay, and if you have any ideas or comments about this testing, please, let me know.
And you can also send me any question if you like. I'll try to do my best to answer.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okej.
Thank
Tack
you.
så mycket.
Merci.
Tack så mycket allihopa. Hej då.
Hej. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Hej då. Hej då.
Hej hej.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Wow.
Hej då. Bye bye.
Hej då.
Hej då.
Hej då. Hej då. Bye bye.
Hej då.
Hej då. Tack så mycket för Munskänkarna.
Eva, var du där?
Ja.
Eva, var du där?
Lena?
Ganska mycket, Peter. Det var ganska mycket.
Bra visning. Hej då.
Hej då.
Hej då.